All right, y'all. Sitting down with the Matt Wenning.
Yeah.
So now I was thinking about this morning, Matt. I feel like I first learned about you. It was probably from, Mark Bell and some of the content he put out.
Oh, okay. Yep.
And from there, got interested in your own YouTube channel, your own content. And what I think personally, because I would not consider myself a powerlifting athlete. My totals and my seriousness isn't adequate to be considered an actual powerlifting athlete. But I love the art of powerlifting. Just everything that goes into not just building strength, but learning how to properly use your leverages and everything. And one thing I thought was great about your content is obviously you're knowledgeable, but the way that you explain, like it's obvious that you're a teacher, of the art of powerlifting.
Yeah, a lot of that started from, coming out of college with my master's in biomechanics. We didn't really learn how to coach like that, but what we did learn was when I was coming out, probably less than a year out of school, I started getting contacted by the military. And what you got to understand is when you're speaking to guys from the military, a lot of them don't have college educations. They don't understand a lot of science-based stuff on training. You're not talking to professors. So what I found was that, when I got into school, one of my good professors, one of my mentors, Dr. Newton, which is probably one of the foremost leading guys in strength and power research, was like, any smart man can talk to another smart man about what he knows and thinks he's smart with. But a really smart man can take something very complicated and explain it to someone that has no idea what that is and be able to get them to understand it and utilize it. And that was when I was realizing that, having all this science background and understanding all these terms is good, but at the end of the day, if you can't relate it to normal people, you're fairly useless.
Right. No, I totally agree, because at the end of the day, no one knows if what you're saying is true or not because of the words you're using, right?
Right.
So, no, that's really interesting. So your degree is in, you said biomechanics?
Yeah.
But at the same time, you're an inventor.
Yeah.
So how did that all come along?
Well, I don't know. I mean, inventing is a strong word. I would say I've modified. So, to be completely fair with everyone in the entire market today, no one's invented shit, right? Like everything's been out for a long, long time, even before the days of Nautilus. You look at, exercises called, JM presses, or, J.M. Blakely was very fortunate to have used those to carry a big bench, or tape presses, the dumbbell fold-ins is what we call them.
Right.
All these things, you could open up books from the 1930s and find exercises exactly like those from somebody else that didn't name them anything. The point is that we have everything works in cycles. My belt squat, maybe exactly like it's designed, has not been around very long, but I couldn't patent it because Nautilus had invented a belt squat in the late 50s.
Really?
Yeah, so they had a machine that was designed to strengthen your hips, right? That was with a belt attached to your waist. Well, if you look at anything patent-oriented, you're going to find that patents, right, are also wording.
Ah, that's interesting.
Yeah, and I didn't know that either until I started digging deep into making things. But what you find is once you go to a patent litigation attorney, you think you just came up with this new invention. You may have never seen it before, but it's out. And that's why people that really create new things now are heavy innovators, because in the sake of saying, there's nothing new that's been out for a long time. I mean, even though Louis was able to get a U.S. patent on a reverse hyper, they were available in the European countries since the 60s.
Really?
Yeah.
That's
what's funny, because I remember somebody was giving me shit for something, and Ed Cohen had sent me a magazine from the 1960s, and it had a sticky note on one of the pages, and he said, "Look at this," and flipped it open. It was a reverse hyper.
What? That's crazy.
Yeah. And now maybe Louis had never seen it from overseas.
Sure.
But the point is that everything's been invented already.
Yeah.
It's just a modification of it. Mine works better than most, but they've all been out before. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I think what it is that people tend to modify and make things better now, right? Nobody's inventing a computer anymore, right? But they make them better. So with the background in biomechanics, understanding how things move and function is why I think the equipment line that we have is so much superior, is because we're not trying to find a way to cut costs. We're trying to find a way to make it the best, both functionally and rigid wise. So that's kind of the difference between, I think, the Wenning strength line and a lot of the other pieces of equipment. Is somebody wants to make 60 and 80% profit off of something, and we maybe make 25 or 30% profit off of it because our overhead is so high, because we're trying to build it to the best of our ability. You know what I mean? Instead of trying to find a way to cut corners and build it with cheaper Chinese steel or mass produce something, you know?
Well, and I got the chance to, I've seen the belt squat before, but I hadn't seen your recent, the Good Morning Machine. And like, even you and I were talking before we started the podcast, is, we were looking at some of the adjustments that you made to where you can adjust how far down you're able to go, or how far up the actual device goes up, and that wasn't the initial design, but as you used it and tweaked it, you found needs to change it till you had the actual
so we
final
built
product.
The original one in the garage, and as we over the years played with it, we're like, man, it'd be nice if it had this, it'd be nice if it had that. And then I really don't build anything at the gym unless I've tinkered with it for at least 3 to 5 years, because I want to beat on it. I want to see how it works. I want to see how it makes my lifts progress or my clients' lifts progress. And then I feel like it's a viable product to sell to the public. But I think that's one of the big problems, is somebody comes up with an idea and they want to market it and make money off of it so fast before they actually put it through the trenches. And Mark Bell's been a huge help for me, as far as just, I'll send him something new. He has one of my belt squats. He's always got something in his own way. He's got something always to say about, I would make it this way, or I would do this, or I would do that. And sometimes I don't think about stuff that way, He comes from a completely different background than I do, but similar lifting experience.
Right.
So it's interesting when he gives me advice on the bench press or the Good Morning machine or the belt squat machine. Hey, I'd change this or make this better or do that. So, but yeah, it's having a good core group of people around you, like Dr. John Russin and Mark Bell and Mike O'Hearn and Stan Efferding, that all have your stuff and want to give you quality feedback so that you can stay ahead of the market.
Right. And that just those three right there are, completely different perspectives. Obviously, some of them, have worked together, Stan and Mark. I discovered Stan the same way I discovered you. And Stan is a whole nother well of, information and life experience. Now, for people that aren't familiar with you, if you were going to sum up who Matt Wenning is to an audience that maybe hasn't heard of you before, who are you?
Well, I would just say I was a poor kid from the gutter of Indiana that, wanted to be the strongest guy in the gym, then the strongest guy in the state, and then the strongest guy in the country, and the strongest guy in the world. Didn't start off with, all the best, I would say, dice in the world. Parents were pretty broke. Dad died at 13. My legs were snapped in half in like 8 places when I was 6 years old. So I was in a wheelchair all of first grade.
Wait, what?
Yeah. So
what happened?
So about 2 weeks before first grade, my friend and I were out riding bicycles in the neighborhood, and I had run out in the middle of the road, and a lady was doing double the speed limit.
Oh my gosh.
And when they hit me, it shattered my right leg in 6 places, my left in 4, and then shattered my pelvis. And the crazy thing about that whole situation was my mom was in charge of surgery at the time.
Really?
So there's a 6-year-old boy coming in with massive trauma to the legs, and guess who pulls up? Right? Me. So my mom's actually in my surgery. Right? So that's pretty wild.
And she had no idea until you showed up.
No, she had her inclinations, a kid hitting the village that I grew up in, and, So first grade was all homeschool, wheelchair bound. I was in cast from the hips down, got out of cast, and obviously it was hard for me to run and walk for a long time. So I gravitated to swimming, and I think that's where my shoulders and my lats started. And I was actually a really good swimmer up until about 13, 14. I just got too big, and I started liking lifting too much. And so I started lifting about 12 and a half, but the reason I got into lifting was I wanted to play football with my friends, and I was a bigger kid. So 6th grade, I was 160-something pounds. And 7th grade, I wanted to play football. So about 4 or 5 months before 7th grade football, I decided I was going to go in and start training legs at the local YMCA. And that's when the bug hit me. But there were a couple guys in there that were really strong and saw me, thought I was in high school and didn't realize I wasn't even in middle school yet.
Wow.
So then they were like, oh shit, this kid's going to be a beast. So they started training me, and that's kind of how it happened.
Well, and so you said you started going to the Y to train legs. Had you done much leg training before then?
No, I mean, I was only 12, so I was doing a lot of BMX riding. You know, even though I got hit by a car, I was still very much into bicycles.
Yeah.
So, you know, it wasn't anything for me to ride BMX style 20, 25 miles a day of like hard sprints and jumps. And so I had really good coordination. My legs were really powerful, and the pedaling wasn't as impactful as running. So the biking didn't hurt my legs as much, but it started to develop my legs, my quads. But the swimming was what I did in the summertime. I lived right across the street from a pool that had a private swim team, and I would swim in the mornings from the time I was 4 till I was 13. And I even dabbled a little bit when I got into high school being on the swim team, but I was just too big at that time, and I knew that I had to be I knew at that time it was time to be a lifter. But yeah, so that's kind of how it started. Fractures and legs, and then kind of gravitating to lifting to try to play football, and then obviously the lifting just took off from there.
Do you feel like, because I think it's interesting that you didn't do any kind of leg training until that point. Do you feel like the bicycling helped kind of the recovery of your legs over that time?
Oh, without a doubt, especially in BMX setting, because you're riding with a low seat post, your legs are bending at a very extreme angle, right? If you're on a mountain bike and you got your seat up pretty high, your legs aren't really cycling that far.
Sure.
But on a low BMX seat, you know, you're cruising around town.
Well, and you probably didn't have gears either, right? Doing a BMX bike.
No gears. So whatever you wanted to do as far as speed wise, you know, you had to put the power into the pedal. And I had mountain bikes after that, but I think that very knee deep bending and you know, movement of the BMX bike really helped to start to rehab the knees and stuff. The good thing is that although I snapped all those bones completely to pieces, for some reason my joints didn't get fucked up too bad.
Wow.
So, you know, my knees were still good. I didn't tear my ACL or my meniscuses or anything of that nature when I get hit by that car. I just broke a lot of bones. So that's actually a good thing, you know.
Oh,
sometimes you're better off breaking a bone than fucking up a joint.
Oh, I'm sure. I'm sure.
So
fast forwarding, you're swimming, then you get into lifting.
Yep.
Do you feel like you kind of gained that competitive interest when you were in the swim team?
Well, I think what it did was, to kind of answer that, was I think swimming taught me to be intrinsically motivated. See, when you're swimming, you might be able to see next to you who's where at, but you don't hear anything. And you're swimming kind of against yourself almost because you're in your own lane. So you don't really compare.
That's interesting.
It's not a team sport.
Yeah.
It's swimming is an individual sport unless it's a relay. But even then, when you're swimming, you're still swimming by yourself. It's not like football where you got all your buddies lined up next to you and you're attacking forward or whatever, right? If somebody fails on another lane, it's not your fault.
Sure.
There's nothing you can do about it. So that's where I think I started to like one-on-one type sports where I was doing stuff against something else, not necessarily another person per se, like lifting a weight. You're not really competing. You're not wrestling. You're not doing that. You're not competing against another person. You're competing against yourself and how you perform with yourself. And I think that's what swimming made me kind of start to neurologically understand, was that I really like sports where I had to compete against myself.
So you fast forward into high school, you're lifting, you're doing football, and then you end up in college. So what's your trajectory thinking going into college?
Well, that's kind of interesting. So when I first started to get out of high school, I didn't have any aspirations to go into college. I actually took a year off, and but I was smart. When I took that year off, I stayed at my mom's house, and I saved up a shitload of money because I was a really good welder already.
So did you go to vocational school?
I went to Purdue's welding academy, and it wasn't a long school, but I'd already known how to weld. My family was around it for my whole life.
Yeah.
So, and I wasn't the best welder in the world, but I was pretty damn good. And I was good enough for maintenance at the local hospital, to hire me on as weekend maintenance. So
wow.
I was a skilled laborer that wanted to work weekends because I was in school.
Well, and you're young. I mean,
yeah,
for
18.
For them to hire someone with that kind of responsibility that young,
it was an advantage to them too, because they knew I was young, so they didn't have to pay me as much as they would pay somebody that was 30.
Right.
But for me, it was a lot of money. So you figure right out of high school, in the late 90s, I'm making $18.50 an hour.
Oh yeah, man, that's crazy
know?
money.
Yeah,
and being that young,
and I'm living at home.
right?
So I'm making 20-ish an hour, living at home, saving up a ton of money. I'm always into cars and motorcycles.
Oh, I know. I see the motorcycles especially.
Yeah. So, so what I did was I just kept saving up my money, and one of the old timers at the hospital was like, "Hey, you need to go figure out how to do something with weights. You need to go to college." Well, how that all started was I was visiting my mom up at the surgical area, and she worked with a lady up there as well. I can't remember what she did. She was just maybe a nurse or something. But her son was like an accountant whiz, and he got an accounting job with the Colts. So he's up there. He's 5, 6 years older than me. He's like, "Oh, what are you going to do?" I was like, "I don't know. I'm going to try to figure out to do something with weights." Keeping in mind, I'm from a small town like where you're from, like Jackson. Nobody knows about strength coaches.
Right.
Like if you're a strength coach, maybe you're the football head coach for the high school team and you have a weightlifting hour.
Right.
I didn't know that colleges and pro teams had strength coaches at this time. And there was no internet, so you couldn't really look anything like that up. So he's like, "Well, you ought to go down and talk to the guy that's the head strength coach for the Colts and see how he got that job." Because I was like, "Fuck, that'd be awesome, right?" So I go down there in a job shadow. His name's John Torreen. He's probably one of the best strength coaches. At least he's stayed in the same place for longer than I've ever heard. He was at the Colts from around 1996 or 7 till like 2012.
Holy
the same
cow.
team.
That's almost 20 years.
Yeah, he went through like 4 head coaches and he stayed there. That's impressive.
That's amazing.
Yeah, all the Peyton Manning years, all the Edgerrin James years. I mean,
well, and you think a new guy comes in, they usually want to bring their guy.
oh yeah, exactly. So somehow he was able to keep all that job through there. But besides that, he basically tells me, "Hey, you're going to need to go to college. You're going to need to get a master's degree, this, and this." And I'm like, "Oh, okay, all right," and kind of took the wind out of my sails because I thought at that time, well, I could just be a big, strong guy and everybody on the football team would want to listen to me, which is partially true, but it wasn't going to get me the job. So I go back to college to go in. My high school grades are shit because I'm in vocational stuff. My high school teachers really don't push me to educate myself to go to college. They're educating me to be a fucking meathead welder, right? So they put me in vocational classes and blah, blah, blah. Well, long story short is I don't have the grades to get into school. And long story short is I go in and I reapply and I go and they put me on probation. So the first semester I get in on probation, which they only let like 10 people a year in on probation. They let me in on probation and I get like a 3.75 GPA. Wow. So now I'm off probation. I'm in, but I had to work extremely hard for that because I didn't have the grades in high school. I was very far behind. So like your average starting English classes and math classes, I fucking struggled because I wasn't learning a lot in high school. And it wasn't all my teachers' faults back then. I mean, you're going through your dad dying, you're going through a lot of changes. You don't know how to deal with anything. All I knew that if I lifted weights and I made myself tired, I was able to focus better. Probably had some form of slight ADD, I would imagine. But, imagine losing your dad like literally a handful of weeks before high school starts.
Yeah, that'd be
brutal. It's brutal. And none of your family other than your mother is heavily educated, so they don't see the importance of staying in school and being, productive and trying to build your grades. So by the time I realized what I needed to do in high school, it was too late. So even though I did really well my senior year, my freshman, sophomore, and junior year had kind of screwed my GPA. So they finally, long story short, they let me into school on probation, but then I proved myself, and then I don't think I ever got under a 3.4 or 3.5. And then when I got to grad school, I don't think I ever got below an A-. But it was a lot of catch up the first 2-3 years. I was like, holy shit, I'm way behind. This is really hard. But I think what really let them want me to be in school there was the fact when I showed up to start school, I already had $20,000 in my account. And I was going to pay for it all myself, and they knew I worked my ass off a whole year to go to school. So when they saw that, and keep it in mind, to go to Ball State at that time was $1,700 a semester.
Holy cow.
Yeah, it was awesome. But you got to remember, school back then was cheap.
Right.
You could literally work and go to school. I can't believe they don't still keep it that way.
That's like a whole nother soapbox to jump
on. To me, if you're in education, you need to be paying the teachers that know a lot of money, and you need to get rid of all of the upper management.
Yeah, it's
because what are they really doing for the school?
No, it's such a huge mess.
It's a pain in the ass.
And just thinking about how many kids go to school because they think they need to go to school,
or they have to.
Right.
Yep.
But they have no idea what they want to do.
No, and that's the thing is I want to really reiterate that point is that when I went to college, is I knew I wanted to do something with weight training. I thought at that time, which I still probably would if the money and the time was right and the place was right, I wanted to be a professional strength coach. Right. I wanted to work for a pro team and be a pro strength coach. That was my goal going in freshman year. Not, oh, well, I just need to go to college to have a degree.
Do generals the whole first year, right?
I was loaded, and my mom was adamant about me taking pre-med classes. She's like, well, what are you going to be able to do with this exercise science shit? You know, she's coming at it from a doctor's perspective. She's like, look, you can always transfer into radiology, nursing, pre-med, all these other things if you just take those. And I started realizing that the base level exercise science classes, if I took the high level, you know, ones that the nurses and doctors and everything had to take, they still counted.
Are you serious?
Yeah, so if you took a higher level anatomy, it counted for your exercise science anatomy.
That's crazy.
So I did it.
And it fit right with what you were going for.
Well, yeah, because mom was like, well, she wasn't looking at it like I would learn more, which I did. She was looking at it as when you transfer out of exercise science into something else. So I'm coming out of this in a grad school level with pre-med anatomy, pre-med physiology. I'm not taking the baseline exercise science classes, which also helped me out getting grad school.
Right? Yeah.
So, yeah, they're looking at me going, this dude's taking pre-med classes. Like, holy fuck, right? Which, trust me, I was not smarter than those other people.
Well, and I think there's a powerful point in that, too, is that, like you and I were saying, think about how many kids end up in college, and they're going there. I mean, I can't tell you how many people I know that either start in one degree and even finish it and are like, this isn't what I want to do, and they go back. And I think there's something powerful in that, is that think about the type of student you were in high school, but then when you knew what you wanted to do and you got into school, what happened with your grades, you know? Because I'm sure
the roof.
Yeah, I'm sure a big motivator was, this is what you want to do.
Think about if those high school teachers would have known that there were jobs like that.
Oh, yeah.
Would have known that, hey, Matt's really big into lifting. We ought to start pushing him into, he's going to have a master's degree to be a pro strength coach. They didn't know that. They looked at me as somebody that was some sub-average kid, probably wasn't going to go anywhere and work some normal job that looks like everybody else is going to work, right? Instead of seeing, hey, Matt's special, we need to push him through, he's probably just going through a rough time right now. And you can't blame them either. They got 35 kids in each class. They just got to do the best they can.
Oh, yeah.
You know, so I didn't really get specialized attention until I was in college. And then they saw, you know, that I was already really strong. I was already really willing to learn, all these other things. So, yeah, I think the big thing is that if you really don't know what you want, or at least the direction that you want to go, college is a waste of time. It's a waste of money, most importantly.
Sure.
And if it's your money, then you're not going to waste it, trust me. I think that's the other big thing is bad right now, is that parents feel obligated to have to pay for their kids to go to school. And in reality, that's got to be on them, because the responsibility of getting good grades and doing those things is of the utmost importance. And if it's not your money, you don't mind wasting it. Like Van Wilder. It's one of my favorite movies, right? If he doesn't give a shit about how much money he has because his dad's going to pay for everything, then
he'll be a full-time student.
Why not?
Right.
So,
dude, that's a huge point. And I think too, you know, being willing to go and find out about what's out there, you know, have some experiences. So you're in college, but you're training still with the same type of intensity.
Yep.
And had you discovered powerlifting at that point?
Oh yeah, I did my first bench press meet at 13.
Oh heck, never mind.
So I mean, that's what was crazy is like when I first walked into the gym, you know, going back a little bit further, my uncle was a big partier, but he was big into fitness. He worked in a steel mill.
Oh wow.
So the dude was, you know, not a lifter, but very physically fit, and he had a set of sand-filled weights that he brought over to the house. So he was always getting kicked out of apartments, or he was like the party uncle, the cool uncle, right? Always had the motorcycles, like the blue bike I just posted.
Yeah,
the old Suzuki. That's the bike I learned to ride at 13, a GS 1000.
Holy cow!
I was putting that thing around. Now, obviously, it's not looked the way it looks now. I redid it all. But it was bone stock, except for like a Kirker exhaust and some other stuff. But I was a 13-year-old kid riding around a GS 1000 in my neighborhood. I mean, like,
that's hilarious,
when most of them thought it was cool to have a moped.
Oh yeah,
you know what I mean? And I'm fucking firing up a 160 mile an hour
They probably
bike.
thought that you were in high school at that point. Anyhow,
yeah, and I was
right?
a big kid. But the point is, he brought a big weight set, a big sand-filled weight set over when he got kicked out of one of his houses or his apartments, and he was working out, and I was maybe 11, and he was like, doing some bench pressing, and I think there was like 135 pounds on the bar. And I was like, I'll work in with you. Let me do something. He's like, let me take some weight off. I'm like, no, I think I can do that. And he's like, it's 135 pounds. And I think I was maybe 150 at the time. And I took it out and blasted it out for 10.
Holy cow.
And he was like, what the fuck? And I think I got it from swimming.
Well, that's
right. My
yeah.
shoulders and shit. And I wasn't doing it right, but I was benching 135 for 10.
Moving the weight at that age is crazy.
Yeah, exactly. And my uncle was almost like shocked. But shocked to the point it was like a drive for me. I was like, oh, he thinks I'm strong, right? At 11 years old, when your older uncle thinks you're strong, it's kind of cool. So that's kind of probably what drove me to the Y at first. But so once I had gotten into the lifting at the Y and the old timers had seen me in there and started helping me, I did my first bench press meet at like 13 and a half and benched 250.
Wow.
You know, and so 2 plates, a dime, and a 2.5 on each side when you're not even in high school yet. You know, and most
kids aren't even lifting.
Yeah, or if they can bench 2 plates by the time they're a sophomore, a junior, or senior, is like pretty good, you know, for an average high school kid. So I had the bug because now I'm the strongest kid in 8th grade. I think my name is still up at the middle school for the 250 bench.
Oh, that's amazing.
Right. So my freshman year, my coaches were really good about not letting me over compete. They would let me compete a couple of times a year. So I had long off seasons, and I would learn better technique and how to train better. So, yeah, I was already doing national caliber meets by the time I was 16, 17. And by the time I was in college, my first year of college, I had already won my first teenage world championship.
Really?
So I had benched 496, squatted like 661, and deadlifted like 632 as a teenager.
Dude, that's crazy.
Yeah.
That's
so I was already really good. And keeping in mind that my legs were shattered as a child.
Well, and that's the thing I keep in the back of my mind.
Yeah.
That's nuts.
Yeah, you could take the bench press and go, wow, he benched 500 when he was barely out of high school. Yeah, I did. But I also squatted 661 with shattered legs.
Right.
You know, I mean, who knows what I've been able to lift, you know, and even though I broke multiple world records, who knows how strong I really would have been if all that wouldn't have been broken.
Sure.
And I would have developed normally. You know, maybe not anymore, but maybe a good 5-10% more, because some of the years the kids are still being able to play, I'm sitting in a fucking a bed and can't move.
Right.
I'm just totally isolated for almost 12 months. So I don't know. You know, but maybe it would have never drove me into the gym to catch up. Who knows? Yeah. It's all these things that are crazy, but
well, and so you trained to that level all through college. So how did you deal with the demands of your schooling? Because you went into a master's program, man, and still trained to that level.
My first year of my master's program, I was one of the youngest guys to squat 900 pounds.
I bet that.
Now, I'll tell you how I did it. I did it because I didn't care about anything else. So when kids were partying and doing stuff, I was in bed at 8:30, right? I would take this to my grave. I think the biggest advantage I had over everyone else of getting stronger and as strong as I got was the fact that I loved to sleep.
That's weird, Matt.
Amazingly loved to sleep.
Being in college, that's weird.
Yeah, and I didn't have time. Like I said, you know, you've saved up your own money in school. You're not going to waste it on, right? Here's my thought pattern. I saved up for an entire year, sweated my ass off, welding dirty-ass pipes and I did it in the summertime as well through college up until about grad school, and then grad school was paid for because I was a GA.
Right.
But even in undergrad, I worked at the hospital on my weekends and off days and things like that. I worked, I slept, I ate, and I trained, period. So from 19 to 25, that is about all I did. And that's how I got where I was. I just thought, if it's not going to make me better tomorrow, I don't want to do it today.
Wow.
Know what I mean? If it's not going to make me stronger or smarter today, I don't want it. And that isolated me from a lot of people. I probably missed out on a lot of friends in college. I only talked to maybe 2 or 3 people from high school. And the only reason they talk to me now is because, you know, obviously we're still good friends regardless, but they're into fitness too.
Right.
But now I'm like a fitness mogul. So to them, it's cool that we used to go to school together and shit.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? So point is I think, you know, that was just my mindset. I was just so goal oriented. I wanted so much more from what I was handed that, you know, partying, staying up late, chasing girls was never in my repertoire. You know what I mean? So it's one of those things where, and you know, the other thing too is I was telling you about Dr. Newton. He told me, you know what? If you want to make a ton of money and you want to be the most successful person you can be, it's all about the work you put in your 20s.
Wow.
Right?
Wow, that's powerful.
Because think about it. By the time you're 30, you're already going to be dependent on money.
Right.
You're going to have a house payment probably. You might be married with kids. So what did you do from 19 to 29? Did you party? Did you screw off? Did you not get strong? Did you do all these things? Or did you buckle down, get tons of sleep, tons of training, and tons of education? And that's what I did. So by the time I was 27, I was out of grad school with a master's degree, and I was already on my primed way of at least top 7, but probably top 5 in the world in powerlifting, both in total and other lifts, to where all that work had started to pay off by the time I was 28, and then 28 broke my first world record.
Wow.
So not only being one of the younger guys to squat 900 at that time, I was also in contention for world records, and I could see it. I could see I could make it there as long as I stayed away from injury and training smart and all these other things. So the point is that when Dr. Newton told me that at 19 years old, it's all about the work you put in your 20s. I wasn't going to waste any of my 20s. And he was right, because by the time I was 33, 34, my business took off. My lifting was at prime. Like, everything was firing. And it was all the baseline work I put in my 20s.
That's a powerful thing to tell a teenager getting ready to go into their 20s.
Yeah, and I think every teenager should hear it. I think the only thing that gave me a different avenue and made me get where I wanted to be is I already knew what I wanted to do. Like at 18, once I met that Colts strength coach, and I knew that there was a job at that level, at that kind of money, if I could make it, that's what I wanted to be. Wow. And that's the thing, is I was ready to do anything it took to get there. And I knew that if I wanted that kind of job for the management side, I was going to have those degrees. And I knew that if I was going to work with pro football players, I better be as badass as they are, or better. And whether that was just lifting, obviously the guys on the field can do things that average people are never going to do.
Sure.
But I wanted to do things in the gym that average people could never do.
Yeah.
And I knew that if I had that kind of clout where, a pro football guy's going to come into me and be a kind of a smart ass from the best Alabama or Ohio State or something like that, he's going to go, man, my strength coach has got 4 all-time world records. I mean, that's like them Super Bowl rings. So for me, I wanted to have the street credit and the educational credit where I could get the job with the education, but I could keep it because I had the street credit from my own endeavors of lifting. So that's kind of what drove me in my 20s. Is like, would you listen to you if you were telling them to work out? Well, I don't know. If I can outbench them by 100 pounds, maybe.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Or if I have a higher degree than they have. So it wasn't about being better than anybody else. It was about I wanted the respect of no matter what job title I was able to get, I was beyond qualified to do that.
No, I think that's right on, because think about it. I've never been in an NFL locker room, but I'd imagine when it comes to testosterone filled, it's got to be one of the biggest. And so when you're in the weight room, I think about when I was in high school and I was in the weight room. I learned a lot of good things and a lot of bad things. I learned a lot of bad form that I had to break later. But I remember we got a young football coach from Rio Grande. Mm-hmm. And when he came in, he would work out with us. And all of us were like, okay, this is cool. And then next thing you know, he's kind of having some bench offs with some of the players, and the dude's strong. Mm-hmm. And it all of a sudden is like...
clicks.
Exactly.
And that's where I think the biggest problem is right now. If I were to lay down one thing with the strength coaches that are out now, is that they might be in the trenches, they ain't lived in it.
Yeah.
They have the degrees to get the job, but when they get in there, I'll go in and lift with any offensive lineman. You put them right in front of me, and I will probably beat them in every lift.
Sure.
But I knew that I had to have that level of qualification. And when I did my internship at University of Texas, which at that time was one of the biggest, football schools in the country, early 2000s, University of Texas was in top 3 every year. The only place I could have went and done something better was probably Ohio State, but I didn't have connections there. I had connections at Texas, and so I did an internship at Texas, and it was amazing the gravitational pull that those guys had to me because I was stronger than they were. Like, they were like, oh, I bench 405. I'm like, dude, I do that for like 15 reps, bro. You know what I mean? So I would go in, and the head coach was like, I want you to lift with them. You're the only strength coach that can go in and bang with these fuckers, and I want you to put them in the ground. So I would take all the big linemen and the good running backs that were super good athletes, and I'd train with them.
Wow.
And so they wanted me to be the strength coach that would work out with them. And that's what they were looking for, right? The thing you
That's
found with your high school.
That's so cool.
But I was able
man.
to go to UT and actually bang around with those guys and actually kick their ass. And I think that created a different environment for them too. But the point was I wanted to be able to do that. I didn't want to be the guy that was the book smart guy and could come in and tell you everything that's wrong, but then I ask you to do it and you can't do it. You know, to me, it was a pride thing. I felt like if I wanted to tell other people to do something in that field, then I wanted to be the expert, both under the bar and in the book.
Sure. To be, and I think that shows a lot in your content.
Yeah.
Because you've put in the work where you can perform, but also you have the ability to explain it. And I really feel like what you said in the beginning of the podcast when you were talking about dealing with the military, it's obvious that you're educated because of the way that you go about explaining it. But you do it in a way that anyone could listen to and understand.
Mm-hmm. And that's where the real people that are super smart are really going to lay it down, because like I was telling you before, I mean, if you can't explain something advanced to the average person and get the point across and get it usable, what good is it? Right? I mean, if I go to a seminar and I talk to 10 other professors on how to train smart, that information's going nowhere. Mm-hmm. It's not helping anybody. And that's what I realized is I wanted to be able to help people. And I think you see a lot of people that could help more, but they can't because they're trying to overspeak people. They're trying to over-impress what they know versus just lay it out, dude. You know? I mean, I have a background in biomechanics, but I don't always talk about force and mass acceleration in the exact correct terms, but you get what I'm saying.
Right.
And that's what matters, right?
No,
if I wanted to sit down and go over my force equations for 10 minutes and make it perfect for the guy, I see people bust me all the time, like, that's not explaining acceleration correctly. I'm like, but did you get the point?
Right.
Like, dude, I'm not trying to explain it to the fucking professor. I want to explain it to the 16-year-old kid that doesn't understand why they need to do speed work.
Exactly.
That's it.
Exactly.
You know, because the 10 people that it's going to be impressed that I say it correctly are not the 10 people I care about at all. Right?
Isn't it weird how people get hung up on what communication's supposed to be? Like,
well, yeah, I think the problem with it is that, you know, and it's so easy in social media, is that everybody would rather, instead of coming together and having a disagreement and keeping it to yourself or having it in a professional conversation, they'd rather just talk trash. All it really does is make everything look bad and take nothing anywhere. That's what I started to learn as I got older. You know, and I was in the pioneer phases of the internet, and you could just watch, like, people that probably shouldn't say anything automatically have a voice, you know? And I think that hurts the sport, and it hurts just society in general, where, you know, have professionals talk about different things and those types of stuff. But, you know, I try to put out as much information as I can to help people. It's just funny, like, you know, you'll find people, most of the guys that disagree with how I do things tend to be, they want to have a disagreement with me, and then I end up asking them their lifting experience or their lifting strength, and then I'm having an argument with somebody on the bench press that maybe benches 250, and I'm just like, what a waste of time, you know? Like, if I would have stopped learning what I knew at 250, I would know nothing.
Right.
You know, and then you have these people like, that's not correct. Well, somebody says this, somebody says that. And I'm like, well, how much do you bench? Well, I bench 250. What? You know what I mean? So I don't know. To me, I just try to put the information out. I really don't try to read comments so much anymore.
Dude, I do not blame you.
I don't really even answer much questions, which I apologize. But what I use is, and people don't think that I don't read them or see them, I do. But all I use those for is to try to delegate and produce more content to answer those questions versus just giving you the answer. I'm like, well, if I see this question maybe 5, 6, 8, 10 times, I know that it's a pertinent problem, so I'm going to address it eventually.
Yeah, you guys heard it. If you want Matt to make a video about what subject matter you're interested in, you need to be on the comments asking questions.
Yeah, asking questions. Yeah, exactly.
So you've got your fingers in all kinds of stuff now.
Yeah, so we got the gym here. We got 3 fire departments that are local.
Now, let's back up for a second so people know where we're at, because they might think we're in Indiana right now.
Yeah. So
but
we're in Ohio.
We're in Ohio.
Yeah, we're in Columbus. So I originally moved to Columbus to train at Westside Barbell in 2005 after grad school. And then, so.
Hey, sir, I was wondering if I could buy some merch.
So what we did was,
Someone wants to buy some merch.
Somebody wants to buy some merchandise.
I mean, they got to buy some merch.
If you guys want to stop by in the next 10 minutes, we'll have a merchandise deal. So, I'm trying to remember where we were at. So yeah, I moved over here in '05 to train at Westside, and then ended up starting my own thing in about 2010. But yeah, I mean, centralized Columbus, Ohio, as far as in my opinion, is probably one of the best economic areas of the Midwest. I would not have been able to stay in Muncie, Indiana, and had the type of business that I have now, just based on the fact of population and people that have, expendable income to do things. But yeah, so I own a gym, Ludus Magnus in downtown Columbus. Then we are strength conditioning providers for Whitehall, which is the airport area, east side of Columbus and northwest side of Columbus, in Dublin and Pickerington. Those are my major contracts, and then we also do contracts with the military when they arise. So right now we're in conjunction with Fort Bragg with airborne divisions. I did an assessment with 173rd in Vicenza, Italy, like 3 weeks ago.
Yeah, I seen you traveling over there.
Yeah, so I was over there working with those guys. It was actually more of an assessment, just kind of figuring out what they needed and showing them the direction I would take that.
Sure.
We've worked with Border Patrol. We've worked with Ranger Regiment. We've worked with SEAL teams. We've gotten guys ready for the armed forces in here, special forces selection, all the way down to getting them ready for basic training, which is definitely a viable need now due to the lack of kids that go to the military that have basically had no gym classes or sports.
That's a whole nother.
That's a whole nother
That's a
debacle.
whole nother
That's
soapbox,
a whole
man.
nother podcast. But so we deal with the military and the fire service, and then we do the personal training here, and then we do a lot of the online stuff now. We have upwards of 55 or 60 online clients that train anywhere from 2 to 4 times a week, and we do all the updates on that. And then we're in equipment, obviously. Yeah, and then we do some of our own podcasts, which are all on YouTube, and then we have the YouTube channel, which now as we're starting to grow, to kind of promote more education and things.
No, and to kind of wrap all this up, one thing I think is really interesting is kind of some of the recent direction you're going in.
Yeah.
Like the longevity stuff.
Yep.
I think that's super interesting, man.
Well, to me, I think that's, if I wanted to be known for anything right now, I think it was creating world-class results without world-class mileage.
Right.
I think that's what I should be known for. So that's what I've been pushing towards. And if you look at a lot of the guys, I actually had a live video, and I asked people this morning on a post on Instagram, who are your mentors?
I did see that.
Yeah, and if you look at my mentors, they're all over 50.
Right.
And I'll tell you why. Because if somebody's still successful, both physically, job-wise, in their 50s, they have to know what they're doing, right? You can get a hot skillet in the pan, boom, somebody that's strong for a couple of years, and they're automatically gone. You don't have to be smart to do that. You just got to be able to work insanely hard and break your body in half.
Right.
But I find that guys that have been on top of either leanness or muscularity or strength, and they've been able to hold it for that long, they tend to be one of the smarter people you ever talk to. Like, you talk to Stan about training, you're going to be blown away. You talk to Michael Hearn about training, you're going to be blown away. You talk to Flex Wheeler about training, you're going to be blown away. My point is that all those guys are over 50. They still look good. They're still super strong, and they're insanely smart. So your mentors change as you start seeing a real directive. Like, I want to talk to people that expand what I know. I want to be friends with people that expand what I know. And that's where I think the line has to be drawn, because you look at a lot of these things that people admire people, but are they really mentors?
Right.
Are they really somebody could teach you anything? I mean, I love watching Larry Wheels work out, but I don't think he can teach me anything.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, his form's moderate, and he's an intensive guy, and he's impressively strong. But where's he going to be in 10 years? That's what I want to know.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good point too. There's a lot of people that admire all kinds of people, but when you have a mentor, like, what they're saying is changing the way that you do things.
Mm-hmm.
So I think, I think that's right on, and I think that's another thing that I didn't think about. That I wanted to bring up is one thing I think that's cool about you is, for all the success you've had, I feel like you are always interested in learning, and you never shy away from being real with people. And like, I remember the first time I saw you and Mike do a video together.
Yeah.
Like, you literally were there as a student.
Yeah.
And I thought that was so impressive, and just speaks volumes of who you are as a person.
Yeah.
That you are interested in always learning and aren't afraid to say, hey, this is an area that this guy knows more than me.
Yeah.
You know?
And I think that's the big thing is like, there's comfort in knowing that nobody's going to know everything about how the human body ticks.
Right.
Because guess what? That means not everybody's right. Actually, no one's actually right. I mean, we only have the best ideas.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, there are no beliefs in this shit. There are ideas. And my ideas change probably 5 to 10% a year based on what I've learned and what I've experimented with.
Sure.
So how I train now is vastly different than how I trained 10 years ago because I keep learning. And I think you find that the people that don't get any better and don't learn are the ones that aren't constantly experimenting, or they're not experimenting with the right level of education.
Yeah.
If I'm going to go listen to somebody about how to squat correctly or train correctly, I'm going to go talk to guys that are 10 years older than me that aren't beat up.
Yeah,
I'm not going to go talk to some 22-year-old that's hitting a big number right now that looks like his body's going to grenade in half, right? And you're like, let's watch the fireworks from a distance, right?
Heck yeah.
So that's where I think the big thing is that, and you got to look at your circle, What I loved about what Charles Poliquin used to say is you're the sum of the 5 people you hang out with all the time.
Yeah, Poliquin's phenomenal.
And I feel so horrible that he had such genetically bad heart disposition.
Yeah.
His dad died at 50 with a heart attack. He had bad valves and had a horrible surgery done in, I want to say Saudi Arabia. He was over there as the trainer for the prince.
Wow.
Like the personal trainer for the prince, and he had a heart issue there, and they took him out and cracked his heart open. And they actually screwed it up worse. This was when he was like 40.
If you guys who are listening have never heard of Charles Poliquin, he passed away last year?
Last year, about last October, last November.
If you've never heard about it, and like I said, like I would consider myself a strength. Like I find it's a passion of mine.
Yeah.
But I know about Charles Poliquin, and his stuff is absolutely phenomenal. And I want to be cognitive of your time, Matt. But
yeah.
A big part of this of the Stay Strong podcast is looking at where a person's been, what they've been through. Because life, it deals us good hands and it deals us bad hands.
Oh yeah.
And dude, you've been through a lot. I mean, what happened to you when you were young, and the breaking of all the bones that shattered in your leg. And then going on forward, and the loss of your father going in, before you were in high school.
Yeah.
But what I think is really powerful that you talked about is to some extent some of the craziness that you dealt with kind of helped your trajectory into what turned into your passion.
Oh, by far. I mean, you look at some of the most successful people in the world, they dealt with some of the most treacherous things that could possibly happen in life. Sometimes that tumultuous particular environments create some great things out of it. For thunderstorms create rainbows.
There you go.
You know what I mean?
There you go.
So
we're ending this thing on rainbows. Can you believe it?
Yeah.
We're talking about powerlifting the whole time.
Yeah.
We end up on rainbows.
Yeah.
But no, and I think it's powerful too, because you talked about that your drivenness over your goal to some extent might have cost you friendships, but sometimes I think people's friendships is what costs them what their passions are.
Well, because if you're the sum of the 5 people you hang out with, and everybody you hang out with is average, you're average.
Dude,
listen,
we gotta stop. We're gonna start preaching to everybody. So
yeah.
Listen, Matt, I can't thank you enough.
Yeah,
It's
no
been
problem.
Fantastic, my man.
Yeah, no problem, man.
If people are looking for you online, where can they find
Well,
you?
if you're on Instagram, go to Real Matt Wenning, because I think there's a lot of fakes out there. My sister set that account up originally when I didn't give 2 shits about Instagram.
Right.
And she's like, well, there's a bunch of Matt Wennings with different dads. I said, well, let's make it Real Matt Wenning. So you can find that on Instagram. Obviously on winningstrength.com is the website where you can get equipment.
How do you spell it?
Wenning. So winningstrength.com with no parentheses or spaces or anything. And then the Winning Strength YouTube channel, which is really taken off. That's a big thing. And then obviously it's Real Matt Wenning's on Twitter. So everything I post goes on Twitter as well. I don't answer the Twitter stuff as much. I don't see it as much. But yeah, I'm pretty good about getting back to direct messages on Instagram. I'm on Facebook. The community page is on there, Matt Wenning, and the Ludus Magnus page also, if you want to kind of see what else we do at the gym with weight loss and these other things. You can get on Ludus Magnus Gym page and it on Instagram, and we show a lot of the stuff we do with the clients here. But those are the major outlets for what we do.
Cool. Hey, Matt, I thank you again.
No problem.
Appreciate you.